In this video tutorial, you get a 2-for-1 because we're going to be talking about the color bar and stroke outline tools because they're very, very similar. And we're going to talk about the features of these tools and how they will really add some pizzazz to your album layouts. Now, as you look at different album layouts that are available all across the web, YouTube actually has some great examples of albums. If you've never checked out YouTube, you wouldn't think YouTube would be a place you go look for album inspiration, but actually if you just type in album design in YouTube, you'll see all kinds of photographers who have posted YouTube videos with little slideshows of different albums that they've created, and you can check that out as well. So color bars, stroke outlines, you see it a lot in album design, and basically there's some neat functions here inside Pixel Creator Pro when it comes to the color bar and stroke outline tool. So in its most basic form, we simply make a selection. I'm going to set my foreground color to black, and when I choose color bar, it will simply create a new layer called color bar and fill that selection with whatever my foreground color is. And so it's pretty useful. And just like before, if I make a selection, I'll hold down my shift key, I'll make another selection, hold down my shift key again, and I'll make yet another selection and choose color bar. Now we have a uniquely styled color bar with multiple pieces. So if you watch the video on Add Aperture, the color bar tool works very similar. Any selection that we make can be converted into a color bar. Let's go ahead and delete this. And likewise, if I make a selection and I choose stroke outline, what happens is we get the layer style dialog box where I can define a certain type of stroke. Now it's always going to default to a black stroke, and it's always going to default to 5 pixels, but we can use any of these options. And when I click OK, I'm just actually going to change my background color here a little bit so you can see this. So you can see that all we have is a stroke. So if I were to make a selection, and then let's go ahead and add an image to this layout using Pixel Creator Pro, the Insert Photo tool, you can see I can actually change the stroke color by just double clicking on my layer style here inside Photoshop. See, in a certain way, that can have a cool little design effect to your layouts just by making that small little adjustment. So it's actually transparent. The fill, you can see the fill is set to 0, but the layer style is available to us. So just a little point there. The other thing, as long as we're educating you, let's talk a little bit about this stroke outline function in the option. A lot of times when you're working here inside Photoshop, a lot of people say, well, what's the difference between the opacity and the fill opacity? Well, let's go ahead and set our fill back to 100% for this example. Now this layer was filled with black, and if we were to set the layer opacity to 0 so we didn't see the black, look what happens. We don't see the stroke, the white stroke layer style either. So that's the difference. So we want the layer to be 100% opacity, but we want the fill of the layer to be invisible. So we only see the effects of our layer style. So that's the difference between the two. It just removes the fill because in this particular instance, we want the layer style, we just don't want the fill, and that's why it gives us the option for either one. So that is its most basic form. Any selection can be converted into a color bar layer, just like the Add Aperture tool. But there is one additional function that we have with the color bar and stroke outline tools that is way, way cool. Let's go ahead and make a selection. We'll use that quick divide function. So we'll choose quick divide, and we'll go ahead and choose the 9 image openings. Let it create that for us very quickly. So what if I wanted to create a color bar around all 9 of these image openings. So I basically want a layer below these 9 image openings. So I'm just going to select all 9 image openings and choose color bar. And because I have a layer selected and not a selection made, it gives me this option where I could define an offset. So in this case, I'm going to define an offset of 1 inch. I'm going to have the newly created layer positioned below, which is the most typical option, the currently selected layers, and I hit process. And Pixel Creator Pro will determine the boundary of the image openings and create this layer below exactly 1 inch around the outside edge. So how cool is that? Very, very useful function. So I'll go ahead and select all those and choose the stroke outline function. Same exact dialog box. We'll do a 1 inch stroke outline to the outside. Again, determines the boundary. And we'll go back to white. And it will go ahead and create. Now you'll notice that it doesn't appear that it did it correctly, and that is actually a good thing, because it gives me the opportunity to explain why. Because when it happens to you, you may become extremely frustrated. You'll notice that the current document units, if you look at the rulers, is set to pixels. So when I chose that stroke outline option, because I had multiple layers selected, I had an offset of 1 pixel. So even though my document dimensions are pixels, anytime that, it doesn't matter what function you're using in Pixel Creator. Pixel Creator can use any unit value. So if you're working with millimeters, centimeters, points, pixels, inches, it doesn't care. But when you go to enter in dimensions or numbers in any field inside Pixel Creator Pro, your guideline tools, whatever, it's always going to assume that you want to use the unit value of what the document is currently set to. So because we're currently working in pixels, when we typed in 1, it assumed we wanted 1 pixel. And of course, that's not what we wanted. We wanted 1 inch. And in any of our dialog boxes, you can override the unit value just by typing it in. So if my document was set to inches and I typed in 1, it would assume 1 inch. But if I wanted to specify 50 pixels because I was designing something for my web page, I don't have to go in and change the unit value of the document. I could just type in the offset to be 50 px for pixels, or 50 mm for millimeters. So in this case, I'm doing it for print, and I know I want a 1 inch margin, so I just type in 1 inch, and then when I hit process, Pixel Creator Pro goes to work and will create a 1 inch offset. And of course, that's what we were looking for, is a 1 inch offset. So we'll go ahead and hit delete. Show you another option here quick. We'll make a selection. Come into bridge. We have an image selected, so I'm just going to choose insert photo. And we'll go ahead and drop in my image. And I have that layer selected, and I'm going to choose the stroke outline again. This time I'm going to do a offset of negative 0.375. And then we'll go ahead and choose process. And then we're going to change the style. You know what? I just did it again. So we'll go ahead and accept that. See, even I can make a mistake. So let's go ahead and do that again. Because I'm working in pixels, when I chose that stroke outline, it said I want to do negative 0.375 pixels. Well, of course, that's not what I wanted. I wanted negative 0.375 inches. And typically, when I'm doing album design, I would always start my document off as inches and not in pixels. But the layer positioning this time we're going to do at the top. So when I hit process, I'm going to change the color of my stroke, and we'll do 15 pixels. and click OK. And you can see now what we have is we have a stroke outline created on top of my image, and we have this beautiful little white stroke exactly 3/8 of an inch in from the outside edge of our image. So how fun is that? So it could be quite useful. So remember, when we're using a negative value, it's just going to drop it in around the inside of our perimeter of our image openings. So that can be quite useful. Now, of course, to change the unit value, with my rulers visible, I just right-click on a ruler and choose inches. And now, by default, any value that I would enter in any dialog box, numerical dialog box, it would assume that I'm going to want to use inches. So that is all the different options we have available to us for color bar and stroke outline. So just to kind of recap, any selection can be converted into a color bar. So we have no limitations as to that. Same with stroke outline. Any selection can be converted into a stroke outline. And then when we have a layer selected instead of a selection, we get that secondary dialog box where we can create an offset. So again, I have my image layer selected. So I'm going to set my foreground color to white and choose color bar. Because I have a layer selected and not a selection, it gives me a dialog box where we're going to offset 0.375. And notice I don't have to specify inches. It's going to assume I want inches. And when I hit process, boom, I get a white box below my image that's exactly offset 3/8 of an inch. So very useful function, the color bar and stroke outline. And like I said, as you look at albums for your album inspiration, you're going to find all kinds of examples of these color bars. We could make this a lowered transparency so we can kind of see through it. And then if we were to add a stroke to that, we'll do like a 10 pixel stroke to the inside. And who knows, maybe we'll even add a drop shadow. Real faint. You can see how fun that is to just add a little bit of visual interest. And then we'll just go one more step, as long as we're talking about it. Let's just go ahead and make a selection, and then I'll hold down my shift key and I'll make another selection. And then maybe I'll hold down my shift key one more time and make another selection, and then choose color bar. And then we'll go ahead and lower the fill opacity of that. See, so you can see that that is kind of semi-transparent, that little frame. And just by building up like that, you can create some interesting little effects very quickly and easily here inside Photoshop. So that should give you some inspiration to experiment with the color bar and stroke outline tools here inside Pixel Creator Pro in your next layout.